Okay, now let's go back to the Microsoft OneNote notebook as we see it within the Microsoft Teams interface and see a few of the differences that we'll encounter between it within the Teams interface and how it appears in the full desktop app. The recommendation at most occasions would be to use OneNote in the desktop app and really just use its instance within Microsoft Teams for review with whoever you're reviewing it. So here again, we're going to go to the group that I set up for BSc 2021. Again, just very quickly, this is our chat page we can post here, and the students, our fourth year students who are members of this group, can read and respond to this chat, just as with an ordinary Microsoft Teams group. We can use the Files tab to upload files to the team and make them available to all of the team, which we can do in addition to or instead of making these files available within the class notebook. We can set assignments, as we saw earlier, for the whole team or for individual team members. And we could record grades if we wanted to, but we're probably not going to do that. And we can also customize the tabs across the top here, and we can add tabs for lots of different apps that might be useful to us to create a kind of a standardized work environment within Microsoft Teams for this particular team. But our interest is in the class notebook, so I'm just going to select that now. And then, as before, we don't need to see the navigation menu here. So by using the expand to full screen, expand tab button in the app, we can do that. And now the class notebook takes up the bulk of our screen. If we click on the little bookshelf here, it opens up the various folders that are contained within the notebook, and you can immediately see that the changes we made in the desktop OneNote notebook are now reflected in the class notebook. So we now have a collaborate, a library, and a supervisor section, and then we have 3 student sections. If we go to the library, we can see that the folders that I put in, health and safety, reference list, citation and referencing, are all there. Within health and safety, there's the 3 pages I listed, including the COVID declaration, and you can see that the form that's linked to this COVID declaration page opens in just the same way within this instance of OneNote inside Microsoft Teams. Under citation and referencing, you'll remember I dropped a PDF document, and here's the PDF document opened up so that you can read it within OneNote. And of course, if we wanted to, we could take this citation and referencing document and we could drop it into the common files area for this Microsoft team if we wished. The last pieces of work that I showed you and really serve to illustrate some of the differences between working within the OneNote app within Microsoft Teams and working with the native OneNote desktop app. So you'll remember I set up a collection of folders called Lab Template Pages, and within that I had 2 folders, each of which contained 1 template page. The first was called RT-PCR and the second was called Dissection. So if we go to the RT-PCR one, just for now, here you'll notice that the page setup is the same as it was before, and the only difference here is that we don't see the grid pattern that I had specified as being the stationery for this page, and that's because the instance of OneNote within Microsoft Teams doesn't allow for different forms of stationery, although it does preserve the page color, and indeed you can alter page colors within this version of OneNote by going as you would in the desktop app to the view menu, and you can choose the page color option, but you can't change the stationery that's involved. A second and somewhat more difficult difference in the behavior between OneNote on the desktop and OneNote within Microsoft Teams is if I add a page here in Microsoft Teams, you'll recall I've set this up so that every new page added within this folder should follow the same template structure as the one that you see in front of you. But this isn't respected when you open a new page within Microsoft Teams. So the new page that opens defaults to this particular blank screen that we see here. We can, of course, if we needed to, we can copy an existing page, and if we copy that page and then try and paste that page in here as we've just done here, the pasted page will look the same. So instead of just hitting add page down at the bottom of the screen that you can't see, you have to take the page, copy it, and then just paste it into the same section of the document, and that's the workaround. And as you can see here, this is what happens when changes have been made outside that have yet to be transmitted, if you like, to the version of the class notebook that's running within OneNote. So this is the kind of message that you get: content not yet available, and it says it hasn't synced yet. Click here or press enter to reload the page. So I'm going to press enter and resume editing. And it's still going to take a while to sync. So the advice here would be that if possible, you should do the work of, and this is for a student really, that the work of filling in the lab notebook and the individual pages in the lab notebook should be done in the desktop version of OneNote. But a staff member can easily review what's happening within that student's version of OneNote simply by opening it from within this Microsoft Teams class notebook. Going here to look at the student, she still has her templates folder. This is what a dissection page looks like. This is what the RT-PCR page looks like. So she has both copies. Again, I can't just add a page and have the same page reappear again, but what I can do is I can just copy this page here, and then I can paste, and then I'll get a new version of the page here. And perhaps I could then, if I wanted to, I can move or copy that page, and I'm going to just move it, and I'm going to move it to Lab Daybook, and I'm going to click move, and I'm going to go yes. And now if I go into Lab Daybook, which I have done here, and I can look at RT-PCR experiment, and here's the new page that I have that I've copied in. Okay, so those are some of the features to be aware of and to be wary of. A couple of other things that you should also pay attention to, not really too easily visible in the Microsoft Teams version, but this is a very important issue for people for whom there may be IP or patent issues concerned with. So when you instantiate a new page by any mechanism, when you instantiate a new page within OneNote, the page that starts, unless you're making it from a template page, is going to begin with a blank title on top, and then importantly there's a date timestamp that's underneath. So you can see here's the date timestamp for when this page was instantiated. Now these date timestamps are actually alterable and updatable, and they're not considered secure or safe for patent or IP purposes. So I'll include a link to some information as to how you can take care of this using a best practice mechanism that involves simply backing up the OneNote notebook at regular basis, but backing it up in the form of PDF documents which can be time-stamped and date-stamped, and those time and date stamps are unalterable. So maybe not an issue that concerns everybody, but it may concern some people. So we leave it there. I hope these series of videos have been useful and might persuade you that using a OneNote notebook within the Microsoft Teams environment is a useful thing for you to be able to do. So we'll exit out from the class notebook now. And one last thing then to mention is that, of course, if we're working within the Microsoft Teams environment, not only do we have the class notebook, but we have all of the other tools that are available to us in Teams, including the Meet tool, which you can see in the corner here, and we can either do a direct meeting and name somebody we want to meet with, or we can schedule a meeting. And of course these meetings will be primarily with people who are members of the group. So this is a good way to set up your meetings and to calendar your meetings with your fourth year students. And during the course of the meeting, of course, you can share the screen and share the class notebook, which will enable you to read and review the material within the class notebook. And then if you wanted to work on a written document or on a spreadsheet together, you can drop a copy of the document or the spreadsheet onto the Collaborate page here. And then the edits that you make and the student make will be reflected in real time on the screen in front of you, and will be, of course, recorded and saved in both your version and the student version of the notebook. The last thing is something that we saw a little bit about just in the process here, which is just to be aware that sometimes the syncing of one copy of the notebook with the other copies of the notebook can take a little bit of time. And where you encounter difficulties, generally just waiting for a period of time, 10 or 15 minutes, or at the worst perhaps an hour or two, will enable these sync conflicts to be resolved.